I mean, China has sought to position itself as a neutral party in the conflict, but continues to maintain very close ties with its strategic ally Russia. It calls for peace talks, releases a 12-point proposal, but remains very close to the Russians. How do we, the world, how do we trust the Chinese to be, in any way, have a credible voice in such a situation?
Well, the fact remains that China doesn't want a war at all. I mean, China gets no benefit from the war because China's strength is in international trade. And then the war disrupts the trade, and it's affecting China as well. But I think the fact remains that China has more levers to pull, as evidenced by the fact that French President Macron and then other leaders, Western leaders, are all flocking to Beijing and perhaps sort of seeking Beijing's help in resolving the crisis. Of course, Beijing is not all-powerful, but at least Beijing has put some principles on the table. But it's easier said than done. My reading is that this war is likely to continue until both sides have become even more exhausted, unfortunately. And then the both sides would sit down to think about maybe a possible ceasefire in the beginning without resolving the whole issue. I think that the idea of thinking about a quick fix, even behind closed door, doesn't square with the reality at the moment.
No, but I take your point, but it is a year now since the war, so, are the two sides fatigued? Is there a sense, Mr. Yurash, of a fatigue? Or is it that the Ukrainians believe this is core to their very national identity, so there is no question of being fatigued in a war like this?
Exactly. I mean, it's as if, Britain would have invaded India and fought with it for a year, and then basically somebody would say, well, let's just give Britain West Bengal and be done with it. The reality is Indians wouldn't give up. This is Russian imperialistic war. They're trying to realize whatever historical delusions Mr. Putin possesses and claim bits of Ukraine, and to give him a reward for that, where he killed so many, destroyed
so what's
so
the end
much.
game? So, Yurash, what is the end game then?
The peace plan.
Do you see an end game then?
The story, how this ends, is very simple. History knows those lessons. That Russia withdraws from Ukraine and allows Ukrainians decide what future Ukraine should be. We are fighting for one simple thing, that is Ukrainians deciding what Ukraine should be. And Russian imperialism is the only factor that's trying to dig us in to Russian reality, Russian corpse, and basically allow us to basically forget what we are and who we are. The point is, we are here to defend our country. That's it.
You're here to defend your country. Given what you've heard, Ashok Sajjanar, what is the best case scenario then? What is it that India really can do to actually make its voice heard, to perhaps be seen as someone who can actually play a proactive role here now?
No, I think India can definitely sort of, be in touch with all sides, because India has excellent relations with all parties concerned to the conflict. So India can stay in touch. But, I would tend to suggest that this is not the time really to come out and, try to make some very significant substantive moves to try and end the war. Rajdeep, we have seen just very recently, Mr. Putin made an address to the nation in which he said, he was very, very determined that the war is going to continue till Russia wins. And we saw also President Biden in Warsaw and in Kiev saying that the United States and NATO alliance will continue to be with Ukraine for as long as it takes. As the German foreign minister has said, that the war, if Russia stops fighting, the war ends. If Ukraine stops fighting, Ukraine ends. So I think that writing is very clear on the wall. So none of the sides is really willing to give up at this particular point of time. So what India needs to really do is, as its chairmanship of G20, basically shield the G20 and the discussions there as much as possible from the political and security issues of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and try to make as much progress as is possible. And I think significant progress is possible on all these issues, which have really been crying out for solutions, like the SDGs, like the debt, like the climate finance, etc.